Brian, you threw out a lot of stuff there, the bullish on 5G and bullish on the future. I'm sure you have a juicy example that you'd like to highlight in regards to maybe a capability where somebody's really using 5G on steroids.
Yeah, I would say what we see, and we're starting to see this in the federal government, and we're starting to see this in state and local as well. It's probably the pervasiveness of private wireless networks, right? So the ability to actually work with our partners like Nokia and others to actually build a purpose-built network, meaning providing the core, the radios that Amanda mentioned, on site to the configuration of the particular agency or corporation, right? And as I mentioned before, we're seeing tremendous success in ports, right? Which has a lot of applicability to the Navy, as well as the Coast Guard, as well as other large military installations, as well as civilian agencies as well, where you actually build, depending on where you want particular coverage or the particular use cases that you have, you need access to, if you will. And we saw this spurred a little bit on the tranche side, right? As Mike mentioned on some of the examples there, we participated in some of those. But now as that migration from R&D, it's now operational, where do we start seeing it? So the ports is actually a pretty good example. And we actually won an award from the Gartner report in the Magic Quadrant on our work on private wireless networks. And we're starting to see that. I would say, as I mentioned in my earlier statement, where I see some applicability similar to a private wireless network is a neutral host networks, where we're actually Verizon goes in, builds out coverage in a particular facility or facilities, and not only broadcast Verizon signal, but we can also broadcast other signals from the other carriers as well as a private network, right? And when you start seeing this, we're starting to see agencies as well as corporations, if you will, start to reevaluate and maybe decommission a network, for instance, right? So maybe they're running a land mobile radio network. And they have a land mobile radio network, they have a Wi-Fi network, and then they have a cellular network and a private wireless cellular network. What can we do here? And we're starting to see actually another one here in the United States, right outside Norfolk, across from the Navy, is a Virginia International Terminal, which is another private wireless network customer of ours, where they're actually starting to evaluate, and haven't done it yet, but do they decommission LMR and go to things like PTT over cellular, push to talk over cellular, right? And leverage that network, because now having coverage and not only broadcasting a private wireless network signal, you're also broadcasting commercial signal as well, which gives a lot of capabilities, not only to the port itself, but also all of their suppliers and shippers that actually use those same networks, right? So you start to get economies of scale than ever before. And what I always tell people when they ask about private wireless networks, the easiest way to describe it is, how do you deliver the most amount of bandwidth with the least amount of infrastructure? That's it. And when you look at an environment like a port where you can't necessarily tear up the asphalt, there might not be fiber, or we're working with certain military or other civilian agencies where you don't want to dig up the ground, if you will, for various reasons. How do you actually get that signal in far and wide, and also the capacity for autonomous vehicles? And we're not just talking about drones, we're talking about vehicles on the ground. So that's where I would say we see very exciting, and we've actually been recognized by industry partners as well as third parties on our work on private wireless networks.